Imagine a magic powered by the very stars themselves, a sublime art that could build majestic cities and create seemingly endless power. Now imagine that same magic being used to fuel an empire built on the systematic torture and enslavement of men. This is the great contradiction of the Ayleids. Hi guys, my name's Jason, I'm a fantasy author and I build massive shared universes, I think too big most of the time. And on this channel, Lore TV, I love exploring how all these things fit together. So today we're examining the dark pacts and twisted beliefs of the Heartland High Elves to understand how a people so advanced falls so far into darkness. The story of the Ayleids begins with a classic elven trope, dissatisfaction. They were Aldmer, the ancestors of all modern elves, but they found life on the Somerset Isles to be rigid and stifling. The ancient Aldmeri laws, particularly the strict ban on Daedra worship, felt like a cage. So in the Middle Merethic era, splinter groups set sail for the mainland of Tamriel. They were pioneers, charting a new course and a new culture in the untamed heartland of Cyrodiil. There, free from the oversight of the Crystal Tower, their civilization flourished. They built majestic cities from pale, shimmering stone, labyrinthine metropolises that seemed to reach for the heavens. At the heart of their new empire, they erected the White Gold Tower, a monument built in emulation of the legendary Adamantine Tower, the oldest structure in Tamriel. They called it the Temple of the Ancestors, and it was the nexus of their power and culture. Their mastery of the arcane was unlike anything the world had seen. The Ayleids believed the world was composed of four elements: earth, water, air, and light. They saw fire as a weak, corrupted form of light. To them, the most sublime form of light came from the stars, which they viewed as direct links to Aetherius, the plane of magic itself, and they learned to harness this power. So using fragments of meteoric iron and glass that fell from the sky, they crafted artifacts of immense power. Ayleid wells, scattered across Cyrodiil, could replenish a mage's energy. Wellkind stones, literally sky children, acted as magical batteries, and the rarer Varla stones or star stones could recharge any enchanted item. This was dawn magic, an ancient and powerful art that other elves had long forgotten. But this incredible knowledge, this civilization literally powered by starlight, hid a foundational darkness. While some Ayleid kingdoms held to the traditional worship of the Daedra, aka their ancestors, a profound shift was occurring. Daedric cults, once forbidden in Somerset, became not just tolerated but celebrated. Ayleid kings and aristocrats, hungry for more power, made pacts with the Daedric princes, and unlike other cultures, they made no distinction between good and bad Daedra. All offered power, and power was the ultimate goal. This led to the institutionalization of one of the most brutal systems of slavery in the Tamriel's history. The native Nedic peoples, the early human inhabitants of Cyrodiil, were enslaved by the thousands. They weren't just a labor force used to build the Ayleids' great cities, they were subjects for their masters' depraved art torturers. Now, depending on which Daedric prince a city-state favored, slaves were subjected to horrors that became the stuff of nightmares for generations. There were wailing wheels and gut gardens. Some Ayleid lords practiced flesh sculpture, twisting living bodies into grotesque monuments, and others favored nighttime tiger sport, which involved the immolation of human children for entertainment. The Prince of Debauchery, Sanguine, known to them as the Blood Made Pleasure, guided these gruesome rituals, and this period is likely the origin of the deep-seated revulsion for Daedra worship that still pervades human cultures today. Now, pacts with princes like Meru Stegon and Molag Bal gave the Ayleids armies of Daedra to enforce their rule, and for centuries they were the undisputed, terrifying masters of the Heartland. Their empire was a monument to their genius built on the foundation of suffering, but the same forces that gave them their power were already planning their ruin. The Ayleid Empire was never a true monolith. It was a loose alliance of kingdoms, and their differing religious beliefs created deep, violent fractures. The most significant of these was the Narfensel Schism. This was an outright civil war between the Barsabic Ayleids, who clung to Daedra worship, and the new mainstream, who would fully embrace the Daedric princes. It was a bloody conflict that ended with the scouring of Wendelbeck, where the Daedric worshippers led by King Glenferen used their demonic armies to drive the Barsabic Ayleids from the Heartland. They fled to the fringes of the empire into regions like Blackmarsh, and this victory for the Daedric cults eliminated any organized internal opposition, but it also critically weakened the empire a mere half-century before its greatest challenge. These rivalries played out on smaller scales as well. The city of Abagarlis, ruled by King Anumaril, was dedicated to Molag Bal. Nearby, the city of Delodil was a bastion for the worship of Meridia, the Lady of Light. Anumaril, envious of Delodil's temple, built a larger, cruder shrine to his dark master, and when the people of Delodil were unimpressed, Anumaril flew into a rage. He pledged to sacrifice Deladil's entire population to Molag Bal and was granted the knowledge to build the Mortem Vicus, a weapon that could drain all life from the city and raise its citizens as undead. Meridia warned her followers, who dispatched a team of priests to destroy the device. They fought their way through Abigarlis, but just as they reached the weapon, Molag Bal pulled it into his realm of Cold Harbor. As the priests fled, Meridia erased Abigarlis from the map with a torrent of divine lightning. The Ayleids were not just cruel to their slaves, they were perfectly happy to annihilate each other over matters of faith and pride. Their empire was already rotting from the inside out. Now, a quick thing before we get to the glorious bloody downfall. I know your time is valuable and your budget is probably tight, so I'm not trying to sell you anything. I run a free fantasy community over on School, and when you join, you get 4 of my books completely free, which is a mix of short stories and novellas, no strings. And if you happen to love my stuff, you can upgrade to a paid tier and support the channel, and if you don't, you've lost about a minute. The link is down below, so now back to the elves who should have seen this coming. In the slave pens of the Ayleids, a Nedic woman named Alessia prayed for deliverance. Her prayers were answered. The divine Akatosh appeared to her in visions, granting her the resolve to lead a rebellion. She was not alone. She was joined by her lover, the bull-headed demigod Morihaus, and a force of nature that the Ayleids would come to know as utter doom, Pelinal Whitestrake. Pelinal was a warrior saint, said to be sent by the divines. To the human slaves, he was a hero. To the Ayleids, he was a living nightmare. He was a one-man army, leaving a river of elven blood in his wake as he tore through Cyrodiil, single-handedly destroying entire cities and killing their kings. But Alessia's rebellion wasn't just built on divine aid and a maniacal champion. The Ayleids' own division became their undoing. Many of the surviving Daedra-worshipping Ayleid kings, long resentful of their Daedra-obsessed counterparts, actually joined forces with Alessia. Their support was just as critical as the military aid from the Nords of Skyrim. The turning point came in 1E 243, as Alessia's coalition of men, demigods, and dissident elves laid siege to the White Gold Tower. Akatosh forged the Amulet of Kings. This covenant gift to Alessia had a secondary effect. It severed the Ayleids' link to Oblivion, preventing them from summoning their Daedric armies. Their greatest weapon was now gone. Fearing the siege would stall, Pelinal Whitestrake left the army and stormed the White Gold Tower himself. He fought his way to the throne room where the last Ayleid sorcerer king, Umaril the Unfeathered, waited. Umaril was Meridia's champion, half-elf, half-Daedra, and supposedly immortal. Pelinal struck him down, but his victory was short-lived. The remaining Ayleid kings, enraged that Pelinal had mocked their ancestors, swarmed him and cut him into 8 pieces. But even in death, Pelinal had the last laugh, because the tower had fallen. The fall of the White Gold Tower signaled the end. The Ayleid Empire shattered, initiating the Great Diaspora. Ayleid clans fled Cyrodiil in every direction. Many went to Valenwood, where they were forced to adopt the local customs of the Bosmer to survive, eventually assimilating and vanishing as a distinct people. Others fled to High Rock, joining the powerful Durrani clan. And for those who remained, a new human-led holy war was just beginning. The Alessian Order, a fanatical, monotheistic sect, rose to power within the new empire, and they systematically hunted down and exterminated their remaining Daedra-worshipping Ayleids. One by one, the last Ayleid city-states were abolished or destroyed. By the year 371 of the First Era, only one independent Ayleid kingdom remained in Cyrodiil, Nedalada. Its people were given an ultimatum by the Alessian Emperor: abandon your home forever or be annihilated. The king, Loriarin Dinar, pronunciations guys, chose exile and led his people to High Rock. Those who refused to leave were massacred. King Dinar's own story ends in tragedy. He was eventually lured into a trap by Molag Bal and imprisoned in Cold Harbor for thousands of years. He was finally rescued in the Second Era, only to die heroically fighting against the very Daedric prince who had tormented him. With his death, the last known king of the Ayleids was gone, and by the Third and Fourth Eras, the Heartland High Elves were nothing more than a memory, their once great civilization reduced to monster-filled ruins and the strange starlit artifacts they left behind. So how did a civilization with such mastery over magic, architecture, and the very light of the stars fall so completely? Alessia's rebellion was the final blow, but the Ayleids had been dying for centuries. Their true enemy was not the slaves who rose up against them, but their own arrogance. As one writer inside of the Elder Scrolls writes, it was their smug self-assurance that their empire would last forever that doomed them to fail. They looked at the needs and saw only tools, not people. They looked at the Daedra and saw only power, not the inevitable price that comes with it. Their descent into art torture and flesh sculpting wasn't a sign of strength, but of a culture that had lost its moral compass in the pursuit of power and sensation. They were a fractured people, more willing to wage war on each other over religious differences than to unite against a common threat. The Narfinsil Schism wasn't just a political squabble, it was a civil war that ensured the Daedra-worshipping Ayleids would stand aside or even help when the slaves finally rose up. The Ayleid story is a timeless lesson about the dangers of unchecked ambition. They show us that as civilizations legacy isn't just in its gleaming towers or powerful magic, but in the ethical foundations it's built upon. Theirs was built on cruelty and division, and it crumbled for it. The Ayleid Empire may be long dead, but its ruins serve as a permanent warning to any who would follow in their footsteps. And as a final reminder, if you're interested in the kind of fantasy worlds I build, and you can join my free community on School and get 4 of my titles for free. The link is down below, and I'll see you in the next one.